Yes! Yeah! Yeah! Woo! Yeah! Yes! Alright, alright! I am excited. It's pool test day. I love doing these pool tests, and I've got a great one lined up for today. For just about my entire fishing career, I've been a braid fisherman. I really strongly believe in the effectiveness of braid. I love its sensitivity. I simply cannot fish with monofilament. However, I'm a huge believer in tying leaders onto that braid, because there's no doubt, in my mind at least, that fish can see that line and they shy away from hitting the lures when they're tied directly to braid. But all of us are prone to confirmation bias. That means we latch on to evidence that supports our beliefs and discard evidence that contradicts our beliefs. So maybe tying a straight braid doesn't matter at all, and I just think it does. I'm willing to admit that. So what I'm gonna do today in this pool test is compare 10, 15, and 30 pound braid, mono, and fluorocarbon and see how it looks underwater. Now, admittedly, this is pool water. It doesn't get any more clear than this. And for the most part, what we're fishing has at least some degree of opacity. Oh, I gotta enter my code to get into the pool area. Don't look. So I'm really curious to see if a leader makes that big of a difference, and I also want to see if fluoro looks that much better than mono. This may be my favorite pool test yet. All right, so I'm back here at my neighborhood pool. We had a big spring cold front come through yesterday. Some severe weather all around. And so the pool is actually open, but it's way too cold. Nobody's gonna swim today. So I got it all to myself. So let me take you through my setup. All right, first up, I got the traffic cone that I frequently use for these pool tests. And mounted to the top of it is my GoPro. It's definitely kind of a janky setup. I've got monofilament fed through the top of the traffic cone and actually have it tied to a pine cone. So I just need to lower that in the water and then we can get started. Now, a lot of these pool tests, as you know, I will cast baits to see how they perform on a retrieve. That's obviously not important today, so I'm just gonna jig the baits in front of that camera. I'll be doing all that with my Fitzgerald all-purpose, and of course, my Lew's Tournament MB. And I just have this Blacklight Zoom Z-Craw tied onto the end of it. What bait I use doesn't really matter. Now, this is very likely to be the most important pool test yet. I'm genuinely excited to see what we discover. All right, this is always the hardest part, getting this set up. All right, looks pretty good. Woo, almost fell in. All right, first up is 30 pound mono. Conventional wisdom says this is not gonna look nearly as good as 30 pound fluoro, but let's see. This episode of Marsh Man Masson brought to you by Puglia Sporting Goods. All right, so I slowed this down so you could get a really good look at it. Now check this out. Here, silhouetted against the bait, you can really see how visible that 30 pound mono is. Now this is pretty close to the camera, but you figure for the most part, any fish that is gonna bite this bait is gonna be about this close. At least at some point. This 30 pound mono, definitely quite visible. All right, next we got the 30 pound fluoro. Definitely a whole lot stiffer than the mono was. Now this should be less visible. Got the same level of refractivity as water. Let's see how it looks. All right, the 30 pound fluoro, definitely less visible than the mono, but it is still visible. You can see that here and here. But comparing 30 pound apples to 30 pound apples, I'll take the fluoro. All right, last up in the 30 pound category is braid. My guess is this is gonna be really, really visible. We'll all know in a minute. All right, remember we talked about confirmation bias? Well, this definitely confirms my bias. I mean, look at this. I may tie braided line to my baits again, but only if I'm stranded on a desert island and don't have any mono or fluoro. All right, so now we're gonna see how big of a difference line class makes. This is 15 pound mono. So as you'd expect, the 15 pound mono is less visible than the 30 pound mono, but it's still pretty visible. All right, so let's compare that to 15-pound fluoro. All right, this is where you really start seeing a difference between mono and fluoro. I can see the line a little bit here and here, but other than that, it's almost invisible. All right, and now we got 15-pound braid. Now I can tell you just from feel and really from looks above water, this 15-pound braid's a lot skinnier than that 30-pound braid. So maybe it doesn't make that much of a difference. Let's see. All right, so yeah, the 15-pound braid is certainly less visible than the 30-pound braid, but it still looks like goat rope to me. No doubt in my mind, using this is gonna cost you bites. All right, in the final line class group, 10 pound. First up is a 10-pound mono. All right, so obviously a big wind gust hit the surface of the pool as I was doing this portion of the test, and that changed the background a little bit, which helps us to see this line a little bit better. But still, I think it looks pretty good. 10-pound test mono is getting kind of thin, and it really doesn't have a whole lot of visibility. All right, now the line that should be the least visible of all, 10-pound fluoro. All right, 10-pound fluoro isn't entirely invisible, but it's pretty close. There's no doubt in my mind if I were finesse fishing on an ultra clear lake, this is the route I would go. But in a practical sense, for the way I fish and the water I fish, this is absolutely overkill. I probably don't need line that is this clear. I just don't think it's gonna cost me any bites if I go with 10-pound mono or maybe even a little bit heavier fluoro. This episode of Marsh Man Masson brought to you by Matrix Shad, and by Fitzgerald Fishing, and by Cito New Orleans, and by Versamax Corks, and by Death Grip Jig Heads. All right, and last up, 10-pound braid. Let me tell you, this stuff is skinnier than Nicole Richie. I mean, it's really tough to tie. It's like sewing thread. Let's see if that means it's low vis. Okay, yeah, it's less visible than the other braids, but especially watching it on the backside of that 10-pound fluoro, I would just have no confidence tying this directly to my baits. This pool test has certainly confirmed to me the value of tying leaders to your braid. Alright, so every fishing line type has its strengths and weaknesses, and also its specific applications. Fluorocarbon sinks, so if I'm fishing a jerkbait or something like a crankbait that I want to get down, I'm doing it on fluoro. Monofilament, on the other hand, floats, so if I'm throwing a topwater bait, it's gonna have a monofilament leader. But I've gotta tell you, if you're tying your baits directly to braid in all but the dirtiest of water, you are costing yourself strikes. There is no question in my mind, and this pool test only confirms that. Well, hopefully you got as much out of the video as I did putting it together. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Also subscribe to the Marsh Man Masson channel on YouTube. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. And until next time, if we don't see you in the marsh, we'll see you right here on Marsh Man Masson.